Hey guys, so we just finished up a podcast with
Ryan Weinstein with Long Island Clean Water Service.
Ryan's 25-year-old kid. I don't want to say kid, maybe not a kid. You are a kid.
Working
I'm
on it.
38. So he's a kid to me. And he said we met on a job site, and I took a liking to him right away. And he's ambitious and driven and a lot of other qualities that I saw right away, and invited him to do a podcast and tell his story to show kids at around that age group, what they could already become at 25 years old. All right, so you guys should have a listen.
For sure.
Yeah. So,
Coffee.
yeah, we could just start at that. You just pick up at that, right? Yeah. So you total science geek, right?
Total science
Yeah,
geek.
which is cool.
Yeah. It's my whole life. It's
Yeah.
like I've always gravitated towards that.
But sometimes you get stuck in it. Like, how the hell does this work, right?
You get obsessed.
Yeah.
It's like,
keeps you up at night.
because it's like the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know. And then
Right.
you're chasing a vicious cycle of information. Mm-hmm. But if you can satisfy yourself at some point, just like put a bookmark in it and then attack it from this point tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm sure you have the same thing. It's like you become fixated on a topic, and a lot of people who are either entrepreneurial or handy or some sort of physical attribute, gift, are not, I don't know if obsessive is the word, but like so result oriented that it
Right.
becomes hard to step away, because
Right.
at the end of the day, it's like you're just focused on the end product and making it as good as possible.
Right. And then when you get there, then it's something else you want to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, which is like a never-ending thing.
Yep.
Which is fun though, because hopefully makes you live longer. Hopefully.
That's what they say.
Yeah.
It gives you purpose. It's
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, it's
So we kind of already started, but once again, how old are you again? You're young.
25 years young.
25. Because I mentioned you, because we're doing a day in the life thing. I mentioned this morning. I said, you're 25 or 23. So 25.
Yep.
Let's go back to high school. Did you start working in high school? What did you start doing? Where'd you go to high school? Let's talk about that.
For sure.
Yeah.
I'd love to talk about high school, but I kind of anticipated this question.
Right.
And I actually wanted to roll it back a little bit further.
I go as far back as you're comfortable. Yeah.
I want to go back to my parents.
Okay.
My grandparents.
Okay.
Because I think they're ultimately the foundation and the root of what I became, or what I'm trying to become.
Right.
And I draw a lot of lessons from them. And,
This still a part of your life today?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
My
awesome.
parents, my grandparents have been a part of my life for a long time.
Right.
I've unfortunately lost them over the years. But I'll draw lessons and memories from our discussions for.
Oh, so they've passed away.
They have, yeah.
Okay, that sucks. Sorry to hear that. Yeah.
No, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
But, the time I had with them was invaluable.
Right.
It's like so to roll it back, my dad's dad. My dad, unfortunately, lost his mother when he was in his mid-20s.
Okay.
My dad's dad was an electrical engineer, worked for Grumman for 20, 30 years, and then started his own consulting practice.
Okay.
So that's where I like to say I drew my technical interest from.
It's in your genes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
They're not too bad, I think. But,
Not those genes. Yeah.
But so and then my dad started his transportation company. He did limos, coaches, buses. He still does, focuses on weddings now. But
Okay.
he started that business out of his garage 2 days after his 21st birthday.
Wow.
So he's been entrepreneurial from the get-go.
Okay.
And got his associates at Suffolk, and has just been grinding ever since.
Wow.
He's got affiliations with all sorts of catering halls, and works out of the Hyatt Regency Windwatch. So I'll plug him, Mark of Elegance, if anyone gets to check him out.
So you obviously got your father's work ethic, and your grandfather's.
I got a lot of things from my
Yeah,
dad. Work
yeah.
ethic being one of many.
Wow. Okay.
Our personalities are very similar.
Right.
If you met him, you'd laugh at even just mannerisms, like the way I talk with my hands and
Right.
my smile and vocal inflections.
Right.
So it's
Like
funny.
father like son.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it really is. It's a cookie cutter.
Yeah.
And then my mom grew up on a farm, so to speak. So
in New York or?
yeah, so I use the term farm loosely.
Right.
So she didn't have a lot of money growing up. It was her older sister, younger brother, and my grandparents. And they rented a farmhouse in Syosset which has since become the soccer fields, baseball fields,
Right.
and huge field in the back. It was
Right.
an enormous property.
Right.
And she's got all sorts of stories from that. But she became really fixated on becoming successful because she didn't have a lot growing up. So she moved out real early, started working at a brokerage firm with her best friend, actually. And then over the years, they rose through the ranks. She's been a financial advisor for 35 years now.
Oh, wow.
And worked at a number of big brokerage firms. But she taught me a lot, and it's in her own capacity about technicalities. She was always focused on financials, so she gave me a background in investing, and then just general scheduling and personal conduct, similar to the way my dad did, but just coming from
Right.
different sectors,
Right.
more or less. My mom's parents, my mom's mom, my nana was a nurse for a million years.
Okay.
And she was the most hospitable person in the
Right.
entire world.
So you're very well rounded with all these different.
I would hope.
Yeah, that's good.
I always
Well, you
strive.
carry yourself. I didn't think you look young, obviously, but you don't carry yourself as a 25-year-old.
Yeah.
So that's why, this is a good conversation to have because you're not the typical, So,
Appreciate that.
Yeah, very well spoken.
Try to set myself apart, but still got the baby face and
Yeah.
and,
Well,
my place and time.
you should grow a beard and get some gray whiskers, and then people are like, oh, maybe you do know what you're doing.
I
People
was
do that to
really-
me for years.
I've been pushing it, man.
Yeah.
It's
I would go to customers' houses and I would show up. I've been doing this since I'm like 19.
Yeah.
And even when I started my business, I was in my 20s. Like, are you old enough to be doing this? Do you know what you're doing? Because they used to like the old oil burner guy.
Yeah.
Or the gas burner guy. And then I would show up and he'd be like, I don't know. But, but then again, you grow the beard and then you start getting grays now. So now when I walk in, they'd say I must know something because I have gray whiskers. So, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The coloration is a sign of the experience.
And stress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, you see the presidents, right? It's like they go in, and
yeah.
4 years later, they look like it's been 20.
They don't age gracefully in the presidency.
Yeah.
So,
It's so
now,
crazy.
so now you have all these great people in your life, which makes you who you are. But when you were in high school, we'll get to that, I guess. Did you work for your dad? Did you?
I did. I had quite a few jobs.
Okay.
Before you giving me so many.
Because I was
talking points
guessing
right
you're
now.
gonna probably be working with your dad.
Yeah, I worked for my dad and my mom actually.
Okay.
So in varying capacities.
Right.
I'd be remiss not to mention my mom's dad, my grandpa, my
Right.
papa.
Right.
Before I close that thought
Right.
out, because he was a social worker. He was the most well-rounded, emotionally intelligent individual I think I've ever met.
So he was a social worker and his wife was a nurse? Oh, wow. So they were very compassionate people.
Hospitality
Yeah.
was, and care and thoughtfulness was at the forefront of their existence.
Right.
And they actually, my mom, my papa and nana ended up living with us for a period of time near the end of their life. And the knowledge that I was able to glean just from the conversations I had with them was, like I said before, invaluable. It's just, I'll have those memories of sitting next to them, next to the fire, asking them about everything from theory of evolution to how to get a sub 5 minute mile up to, work ethic and how to handle relationships.
Right.
It was just special moments.
You
in
have
my
how
life.
many years of experience to give you advice on?
Oh my gosh,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Between the 3 grandparents that I had in my life,
That's
it's
awesome.
almost 200 years of experience.
Yeah.
And on that note, I'll transition to high school, but
Yeah.
it's like I think they taught me the value of communication and believing that every single person has something to offer and a lesson to be learned.
Yeah.
Regardless of your background, your experiences, your circumstance, it's like every single individual that you come into contact with has got a story, and you can learn something from that.
Yeah.
And I really, really try to emphasize that, regardless of what I'm doing, whether it's for business, personal travel, so on. Sorry.
That's awesome. Don't be sorry.
Yeah.
That's a great way to view it.
Yeah.
And I tend to agree with that very much. There's people in business or not in business or people that work for different companies that are very good at doing certain aspects of it, but lack the communication, so they can never get to the next step. And that's a problem. And I think more now than ever with kids with communication is very difficult because everyone's on their phone.
All day.
And they're texting. No one calls anymore. So it's like it's a whole different world. But that's what we're trying to bring back. Communicate, look people in the eye when you shake their hand. Say please, say thank you, that sort of thing. Things that we were taught that your grandparents was second nature.
Oh,
So
emphasize the value of a firm handshake with eye contact.
right,
It's first impressions, right?
huge. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. So now your dad's got the limo company, and your mom was doing like financials. You said.
Yep.
So how'd you work with both?
Yeah.
I would imagine cleaning the cars for your dad.
That's how it started.
Okay, just shooting out there. Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
no, simple things like organizing work orders, cleaning the vehicles, what it went into that.
And how old would you say, when you started doing that?
I remember being in their offices as young as my memory can reach.
Right.
And, from being a little kid just running around on the floors,
Right.
maybe I reached 5 or 6, I'm messing around on the computer a little bit, just playing like, Deer Hunter games or
Right,
something.
right.
And then, probably around maybe age 10, I started to look at what they were actually doing, start to see my dad at the desk taking calls, writing paperwork, doing things like that.
Watch how he interacts with people on the phone,
Exactly.
sponging it in.
That's it.
Yeah.
The exposure is really the key.
Yeah.
I'm a believer that, with certain things, right?
Right.
Maybe
Yeah.
the cell phone exposure can wait a little bit longer in
yeah.
life, but, really putting yourself in the mix of it can help develop some pretty beneficial qualities,
Right.
habits.
Now, did your dad have a few employees, or? Yeah.
Yeah.
So you kind of also saw the good and the bad with that at a young age too, probably. I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Who's not showing up on time? Who said the wrong thing to a client? Who didn't? Right? I mean,
there's been a few.
absolutely, yeah.
But so is life, right? And but that being said, taught me a lot about desirable qualities and what you look for in an employee. And him being the founder, president, owner of his company, having to delegate work and then also make decisions based on performance and client interaction, customer retention, things like that.
So you definitely got a solid base to work with, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am super proud of where I come from. I just hope that I live up to those expectations, because it's, for him starting a business when he was 21 and then growing it to the success that he's had now, and then the same thing with my mom. It sets a high bar, to say the least.
Right.
But
You're up for the challenge.
I've always told myself that.
Good.
And it's like keep getting better every single day.
Yeah. Now you have them to guide you, so it's good.
I do.
Yeah.
I'm very blessed to have both my parents in my life. And
So you
and
would
their
say
health.
you worked with them throughout high school. What would you do with your mom?
Yep. So for my mom, it was same thing at first, just filing paperwork, looking at positions. So she'd have me up on the charts, running down, showing me all sorts of vectors, ways that you can analyze and predict in the future. But
Now for stocks,
for stocks, yeah.
I could use some help with that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I kind of dabble.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's a lot to it, but to that same point, a lot of the investment strategies that she would adopt were
Right.
not that complex. Some people will look at 20 different chart types or more or
Right.
less,
Right.
and then base everything off that. And as important as that is, she would also have the news on constantly to be tracking current events. She would be interacting with clients to see what their goals were.
Right.
And so it really, for both my mom and my dad, the concept of developing a well-rounded approach to a client or a prospect or whatever the case may be was emphasized, because you could throw the best price out there, but maybe that's not the right vehicle in my dad's case.
Right.
Or you could throw a really high-risk stock that has a huge upside, but if you're 60 plus, then you're thinking about retirement. You don't need to be as volatile with
They
your-
want to do right by the client.
Yeah, yeah, and I think just the conceptually taking it as a case-by-case basis, gathering as much information as possible, and then just deliberating as such is that's probably my biggest takeaway from both of them.
Which you utilize very much in what you're doing now.
I try to.
Yeah.
I really in all of my appointments, it's initial questions centered around wants and needs. And then from there, it's, I can show you options that relate to you, but I think there are certain approaches which would give a litany of different options, and it creates a lot of confusion, and then that leaves the customer to disseminate between information that may not necessarily be familiar with. So provide whatever assistance I can with clarification. So
that's good.
Yeah, I know it's a mouthful.
No, it's interesting. So, high school, you're working with your mom and your dad. You went to college, obviously.
I did.
Right? I know we spoke on that briefly last time we sat. But so where'd you go to college?
So I went to college at the University of Vermont.
Okay.
I ended up getting my bachelor's and my master's through an accelerated program. It was a 5-year track for civil and environmental engineering.
That doesn't surprise me at all that he was on the fast track.
Yeah. Well, I knew I was a nerd from the time I was a little kid. I'm gonna roll it back again.
Yeah.
But I remember sitting at my kitchen table with the cork top on the old wood, and my Nana's sitting right next to me, teaching me how to write script. And then as I get older, it's her and my mom teaching me how to do math.
Right.
And then my pop always loved science. And
at the same table?
Same table.
That's awesome.
Same table.
Yeah.
And that's all the homework got done at the kitchen table.
That's awesome.
And as I got older, I started to take it into my room, and then I realized that I actually felt more critically comfortable while I was around everyone in an open space. The isolation, we could talk about isolation tactics, but I think there's something to be said for both in terms of productivity.
Everyone's different. Now you have brothers or sisters?
One younger sister.
One younger sister.
5-year difference.
Did she take the opportunities that you took with having that surrounding? As well? I'm sure she did.
Because of the age gap and the things that happened in our lives, it ended up creating some separation in terms of what she was able to experience versus myself, but she has picked up a lot of the same qualities.
Well, you had them one-on-one for a long time. 5 years
I did.
long.
That's the thing.
Yeah, which is nice. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. So.
And I never shortchanged that value because it's so integral to who we are as people. But at the same time, like if you got my sister and my dad together, such a similar interaction with their mannerisms.
Yeah.
And then as far as looks go, it's like me, my sister, and my mom are all cut from a cloth.
Oh my God, it's funny.
It's nuts.
Yeah.
It's nuts. But anyway, back to the kitchen table and the homework.
Yeah.
It's like then on my dad's side, with his father being an electrical engineer and my grandpa always having a vested interest in science, it was the math with my mom and then the science with my grandpas. And that kind of took me into this like calculus, physics-driven track, which ultimately is the foundation for engineering.
Right.
And everything that it is centered around.
So that's what you went for.
That's what drove me into
engineering, which is a very interesting topic, obviously.
I love it.
Yeah.
It's and specifically how it related to water.
That's the kind of thing that keeps you up. Like when you really look at, like, you ever see that show, I think it's Engineering Marvels or something like that? Like when you really think about how these things are constructed and who thought of it and how they thought of it, and it's amazing.
It's like all the bridges in Manhattan, right? And
they
managed to figure that out hundreds of years. Right?
And how do you navigate fixing them and repairing them now with traffic, different things, and
the complexity of those operations is absurd.
Yeah.
And not to get into it now, but it's
but that's like
it really
like
that kind of thought always fascinated me.
Yeah, and like I said, like now those guys that did that stuff aren't around anymore. So who's replacing them? That's my worry all the time. So that's why we talk about this sort of thing. Like a guy like you would definitely fit in that seat, I'm sure. You're smart, you have your background, but how many guys are going to take the responsibility, and want the responsibility and the accountability? That's what we have to bring back.
Yeah, there's.
You got to teach it at an early age.
Oh yeah.
You got to introduce it.
Well, that's the plan.
We do. I don't know if you know Mark Rober. He used to work at NASA.
Okay.
He's massive on YouTube. He's got millions and millions of followers. So basically, if you ever go on YouTube and want to laugh, they have delivery boxes that go to people's houses, and people steal the boxes, except they're glitter bombs.
Right. Oh yes.
So when they get home and open it,
it's
a massive glitter explosion around the house, like the fart smells everywhere.
Yeah. But and there's a camera inside the box, I think, right?
There's a camera on all 4 sides, so they get everyone's reaction.
Yeah.
But what he's doing for kids, or doing for my daughter, it's called Crunch Labs.
Okay.
And it's every month. It's a subscription, and every month you learn a different part of engineering. So we made a disc shooter from scratch. He gives you all the pieces. The YouTube video, 20 minutes. You watch it, but you put it together with your kids. Or your kids put it together, obviously. You know how you flick a coin on the floor and it spins?
Yeah.
We made a shooter. It just shoots off this paddle and it spins on the floor. My daughter looks forward to it every month. Like
That's
every
awesome.
month she's like, when's the next one coming? When's the next one coming?
It's genius.
And we have this tripwire now, and it shoots 5 balls through the air. So if you're walking through the house, you always have to look down at the floor because she's setting up tripwires. And it shoots balls at you.
Oh, that's
So
awesome.
it's pretty hilarious. But much like you were introduced to things at an early age, you caught on. Introducing it at an early age is critical, I think.
Piquing interests. Yeah.
Yes. Not everyone's going to be interested.
Yeah.
Not everyone's going to be interested, but those that are, just nurture that and then lead them in the right direction, and then they can rebuild the bridges. And
So now both your girls are into it, or would you say more
so my
one than the
8-year-old is more focused on it.
Right.
My 5-year-old likes to play with them once they're built,
Okay.
but her attention span is more towards other things.
Right.
But my 8-year-old questions literally everything and will look it up if she can't find it.
Curiosity is huge. Yeah, that's huge. Yeah.
She's very inquisitive, but again, it's not for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So
I've been that way my whole life. I've questioned everything.
Yes.
I was a skeptic from the moment I stepped foot on
Yeah.
Earth.
Well, how's that work?
Yeah.
Right.
It's an interesting life.
It's
Sure.
a blessing and a curse.
I would agree 100%.
Because when you can't find that answer, the rabbit hole you go down.
Sometimes being naive is a nice thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Blissful. As
What
so the
we
term
say?
is.
I guess ignorance is bliss, right? Is
Yeah,
that what they say?
ignorance
You know?
is a tough way to frame it, but it really is like there is a sweet spot where a certain level of knowledge is beneficial, and then once you take it past that point, it becomes torturous.
Yeah.
Right.
but-
Well, what movie is it? Where it's like they say what the American public doesn't know is what makes them the American public.
Right.
What movie was that? It was a scene in a movie, but yeah, like I'm sure if everyone knew what was really going on, it would be a worry. You know what? Every single. I think it was Men in Black. That was a great movie.
Oh, great movie.
Yeah. Tommy Lee Jones. Yes, that's what it was. It's all coming back now.
Oh, you know what?
Yeah.
I love those movies.
Yeah,
But I can see him quoting that. Right
Yeah, and
there.
then give him a little thing, memory
Yeah.
loss and memory wipe, and
Yeah,
that's it.
they're
You're
like
done.
outside the building right
Yep.
before he hits him.
Yep.
That's so funny.
So
Wait. What the American public doesn't know is what makes them the American public.
yeah.
Dan Aykroyd and Tommy Boy.
Oh. Wait, but did Tommy Lee say it in Men in Black too?
I don't know. I got the quote.
I remember that scene too.
Yeah, I don't know. It's not,
Also a great movie.
nothing's coming up with Men in Black, but
Ah.
Tommy Boy is one of the best movies.
Didn't we use one of those sayings from there? We interpreted Ryan Anthony's into it.
Yes.
I forget what it was now. It's gonna come to me too. It was funny. We're the American working man helping. I forget. I don't know. So
Does Dan Aykroyd play Chris Farley's boss?
no, Dan Aykroyd is he's the guy who owns the big auto
Ray
dealer.
Zelinsky.
Ray Zelinsky, yeah.
He owns
Yeah.
the auto parts.
That's buying Tommy
Auto parts chain.
his brake pad division or his whole shop or whatever.
Okay.
You didn't see it?
I haven't seen it in a long
you're
time.
young.
I got that quote. I got a fat guy in a little coat.
Yeah.
I
That
got
and Black Sheep are like the best Chris Farley movies ever.
yeah. Well, it's him and David Spade. The scene
Yeah.
where the car breaks down is
Yeah.
oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
It has me crying. I got to rewatch it now.
Yes, you got to watch it.
Back on the queue.
Yeah. So you go to college, get out of college. What happened when you got out of college? Did you apply for engineering jobs or? Let's
Yeah.
talk about that.
Yeah. So that was a wild ride.
Yeah.
So I finished my bachelor's in 2019, and then that just transitioned because I double counted credit. I had credit from the only reason I was able to do that in the first place is because I took initiative in high school. So
Right.
I want to emphasize that as well because like if I had not made that plan for myself,
Right.
and emphasis on the plan, then I wouldn't have even had the opportunity. So, but finished my credits in that bachelor year early, started double counting classes, and then in 2020 I finished the master's component. But I finished it as we entered into a worldwide pandemic. So that made things pretty interesting.
Yeah. Who's hiring then?
Who's hiring then? I was living in Vermont, and
You ski?
snowboard.
Okay.
Love it.
snowboard.
Love
Never been in my whole life.
Ah.
I've always been in the heating business, so
Yeah.
no skiing, no nothing. no winter activities we did. We fished
Right.
in the summer and the spring. That's about it.
Exactly. Well,
yeah.
because in the winter,
Oh,
everyone
yeah.
needs you.
Yeah. Well,
It's
my
like-
dad was delivering oil, so it was like, yeah, no, we're not going anywhere. So even to this day, like I want to take my kids on vacation like April, and I can with my business because, it's kind of self-sufficient for a week if I leave.
Yep.
But my dad, no, maybe April, but he's
Right.
like definitely not ever February.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay.
Hey, listen, man. The best conditions are March and April for spring skiing, so it's
Yeah,
like,
oh, okay, yeah.
you'll get plenty there.
Well, I don't know if I would go skiing because I would probably break my leg at this point. I'm 38 years old. I hear horror stories on people who like really try it later on, and you fall the wrong way with those things, the way they're booted up. And,
I've seen it happen firsthand.
ouch.
It's
Yeah.
it's not fun, and it's like then you're cutting into your productivity, right?
Yeah.
It's like now you're hurt and you got to go to work.
Yeah,
and
hobbling around, and it's not good.
not the best case.
No.
But yeah, for me personally, I was a big winter sports guy while I
Awesome.
was up there. But Vermont as a whole is much different economically than New York State.
Right.
And as I'm finishing and beginning my
More
job search,
rural, right? Yeah.
very rural, very environmentally focused. Not to say that there's not opportunity for environmental engineering there. I have
Yeah.
lots of friends that stay.
More game wardens up there.
Couple game wardens.
Right, I watch
for
that
sure.
show.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's great. I mean, the nature aspect of the state is what drew me.
That's awesome.
I was always a outside player,
Right.
in terms of the world, but
So that's good. You had a good experience there.
yeah, I had great experience. But it was just the way that it finished was not what I expected to say.
Well, we finished right into COVID. You're saying, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that
Now you got to bob and weave.
it was a bob and weave.
Yeah.
And I found myself looking at different options, and I've been paying rent for 2 or 3 years at that point. So I knew.
So were you working while you were going to school up in
Yes.
Vermont?
Yep.
What were you doing up there?
Yeah. So I worked in the food business since I was in high school.
Okay. Restaurant?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Bussing tables, cooking, waiting, everything.
Now, that's a key thing because I tell all the kids young like that, they should all be in the restaurant. If they can't have a job.
Absolutely.
Because
Absolutely.
I want to hear your reasons for it without me saying it. So what are your like top takeaways of doing that particular job?
Number one, interaction. Learning about people.
Mm-hmm.
And they say you learn a lot about how someone treats their server. But
Yeah.
that aside,
Yeah.
it is the biggest melting pot of culture in a restaurant.
It's like public speaking 101.
I'm telling you, you'll cut your teeth on every different personality you could possibly come into contact with.
Okay. What else?
So the interaction and the communication, number one. Number two, the value of good work. Whether it's cooking a meal right,
Right.
or speaking to someone with the utmost politeness, and on the inverse side of that, being able to handle dissatisfaction and conflict resolution, even if it's just, you missed the sauce, or
Right.
this is cold, or
Problem
this isn't what I
solving.
ordered. So, from that perspective, it's got a lot to offer. And then there's so many just like more nuanced things that you pick up along the way.
Right.
Timing, whether it's just showing up or how quickly you can turn a table over, or managing meal tickets at the same time.
Right.
And then perhaps like your first exposure, if you're a younger individual, with management and how to be a good employee, but then also how to handle all the inner workings of a job itself.
Right.
Right. Expectations, performance, opportunity for promotions, forward thinking in terms of job opportunities,
Right.
and
Yeah, you're networking while you're there.
the whole time.
Yeah.
The whole time.
Right.
And most people won't stay in the restaurant business. Some people are super passionate about it. They go from bussing tables up to buying the place 10, 15, 20 years later,
Yeah.
depending on what else they got going on. But
So it's funny you
Hold that
say that
thought.
because we just did a podcast with 3 girls who were in the restaurant business basically their whole life that opened up their own restaurant in Lindenhurst.
Yep.
So it's a similar story. And they touched on those topics too. Because right now, with a lot of restaurants that I speak to, it's tough finding help, right? College, high school kids that want to work. So that's, another avenue that we're trying to help out as well. So
For sure.
So you had some all positive takeaways from that.
I had a lot of positive experience, and there's some things that you get exposed to, or maybe that's not for me, or
Right.
okay, use that as a nugget to
Right.
apply towards myself for improvement.
Right.
But a lot of
Well, you saw a lot of
Strong
different
lessons.
attitudes too, because I'm sure you took your job very serious and wanted to make tips and make people happy. But I'm sure there's people you work with that really didn't care and were just there, and then probably worried why they never got tips, right? It's the same story.
Yeah.
They don't want to put the extra work in or the extra smile or the extra, hey, how can I help you, just to get the money, but then they'd be the first ones to complain that I don't get any tips. And why me? Why? Yeah.
Yep.
So it's the same thing.
Blaming everything except the person in the mirror. So
Right, exactly.
It's accountability is a big thing,
Yeah.
and when you see it in an environment like that, it's relatively low stress, or I shouldn't say low stress, low impact per se, because someone will get their food, the table will turn over, and then you'll have a new opportunity.
Right, exactly.
Different than when you're working.
Start over, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's good. So you picked up a lot of your communication skills there.
Oh,
Besides, so you have your grandparents, your parents, then you going to work, you working at the limo place with your father,
Yep.
right? And you just constant, and you took a liking to it because once again, you approached me, right? We talked on the phone at Mr. Kibi's house,
Yep.
and I think you sent me a picture of your card, right? We spoke for a little bit, and then you wanted to have coffee,
Yep.
which like 25-year-old kids don't do. So I was like, I got to talk to this guy, and then here we are. So it's everything that led you to this point is because of your experiences. So it's awesome.
yeah. I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah,
Feels good to hear that I'm doing something right.
you are,
And,
absolutely. Yeah.
And that validation.
Yes.
But
So now you're working in Vermont. You're going to school. You graduate. COVID hits.
COVID hits.
So where's couldn't get the job. So how'd you land into where you are? Or am I missing another piece here?
Yeah. So it was a combination of job opportunity in the state of Vermont and the rent that I was paying and the things, most of my friends had graduated, some had stayed, most have moved. And I just felt the culture changing, my interaction with the city had, not to say my time had passed, I may end up back, but
Right.
at that place in time, I was looking for a change of scenery and,
Right.
And different opportunity. And I mentioned the rent component several times because
Right.
it was really something I fixated on. From
Right.
my mom's side,
Right.
the financial security was always something I'd focused on. I've had a vested interest in real estate for a long time. And so the story from this point is actually pretty funny. I moved back home to reduce my cost on living.
Right.
I job searched throughout the summer, applied to a number of different consulting firms. Got some offers, didn't see anything that I was really passionate about. Also decompressing because I spent quite a bit of time in academia.
Right.
So there's that factor.
Did you get a job here while you were waiting for that other job, or you were just kind of like focusing on getting the job?
So my whole life, every time I've come home, I've gotten to work.
Right.
Whether it was cleaning cars for my dad,
Right.
which a lot of times I would do in the winter, ironically, because
Right.
that's some of the only work I was
Yeah.
able to find. And then in the summers, I have always been a landscaper.
Okay.
I've always worked with my mom in the gardens, always done weeding, surfacing, mulch,
Right.
regrading,
Right.
all sorts of that stuff. And so I built out a little bit of a landscaping business. I went around my neighborhoods, I networked with my family friends, and I ended up getting between 10 and 12 clients.
That summer.
Yeah, well, I'd built it over
Yeah.
time.
Right.
So I'd have people I'd come back to, and then I would always be looking for
Right.
additional opportunity. And so that summer, when I came back, I was like, I gotta
Oh,
put,
so I'm mistaken. So every summer you came home from college, you had basically this business ready to go.
Yep, I would always shift back into it, unless, like, as I got older, I ended up taking engineering internships.
Right.
So I worked at an electrical engineering firm, I worked at an environmental and civil engineering firm, and then would alternate that based on opportunity.
Awesome.
And
Hustling.
my whole life.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I love it. It keeps me going.
Yeah.
But that summer, when I moved back home, I shifted back into the landscaping. I was also working out really, really hard. I put myself on this regimen that was called the Murph.
What's
And
that?
the Murph is I believe it originated as a military routine.
Okay.
Where I believe it's 100 pull-ups, 200 push-ups, 300 bodyweight squats, and then a mile run on each side.
Every day?
I did it every day.
Holy shit.
I did it every day for like 45 days.
Wow.
And
You
you're
must
supposed
have
to
noticed
do
a drastic change in your...
tremendous,
Yeah, that's amazing, yeah.
but it comes at a cost.
Yeah.
So that story is great up until the point that it turned into an overuse injury.
Okay.
And then literally at the end of that summer, August 24th, I believe it was, I'm trying to push myself a little bit further. I alternate to a pistol squat and blow out my knee.
Oh.
My second knee.
On body weight squats.
On a pistol, it's one-legged.
Right.
But
But with
just-
body weight.
Yeah.
Which is still a lot. That's a lot on one leg.
Yeah, and it was, it's funny because I've become obsessed with rehabilitation since that point.
Right.
And I might have a chance at doing
course
it
you
again.
Doesn't sound anything like you at all.
I'm telling you, I sink
Yeah.
my teeth in and
Yeah.
I cannot pull myself away.
Right.
But that's an art in itself, learning how to step back.
Yes.
And so as is testament to the overuse injury, just my struggle with providing sufficient recovery and allowing that rebuilding stage to take place. You can't just be go, go, go 100% of the time.
Right.
As much as you'd love to be, it's like there's no free lunch.
Right.
There's always an exchange.
Right. So how long did that knock you out for?
So this was my second time with a meniscus repair. I did it on my left leg the second time. It was my right knee the first time.
Okay. Is that a laparoscopic surgery or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was pretty seamless.
Okay.
It had to be most of the time you can get by with a meniscus tear, but the way that it was oriented, it required surgery. So,
Right. Okay.
the recovery was pretty quick. I want to say I was at PT within 6 weeks, and then I think my full recovery was 12 weeks.
Wow.
And I really pushed it the second time because I knew I was capable of from the first.
Right. So that's good.
Excuse me. Yeah. So during that time, while I'm laid up on the couch and have minimal
Just gonna
mobility,
ask that. Yeah.
I'm working out my upper body as much as I can.
Right.
And I'm just consuming information like it's going out of style.
Right.
Listening to Rich Dad Poor Dad,
Right.
the
Robert
richest man.
Kiyosaki, right? Yeah.
Yeah, Robert Kiyosaki, Richest Man in Babylon, The Intelligent Investor, a number of books.
Richest Man in Babylon. What is that? What's that? Not this Babylon.
Yeah.
Is it? Yeah. Or is it Babylon? Babylon. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a book that is centered around philosophy,
Okay.
and I think it's got it's like a moral of the story kind of novel,
Right.
or I guess it's not a novel if it's factual. So, but the basis for it is not so much defined approaches to financial investing, but more so like your mentality. Versus like Rich Dad Poor Dad or The Intelligent Investor, which is really centered around that. And that led me into, all right, I had my exposure to the stock market, and bonds to that degree. I had some friends that were getting into insurance, so I was learning a little bit about that. But really, the thing that I spent the most time gathering information on was real estate. Primarily because I had this belief of avoiding rent costs, and I always wanted to be a homeowner, so that was kind of the path I took.
Right.
And so I spent a lot of time doing that, in addition to job hunting.
Right.
Because I said, I got to get off this couch and do something with myself.
Right.
So I looked into consulting again briefly. Still nothing popped up relative to Long Island, New York area. And at the same time, I felt myself feeling more entrepreneurial, probably because I had this background that I never really tapped into because I went the completely opposite route with technical approach
Right.
with academics. And so I'm mulling this idea around. I said, I always loved the concept of being an entrepreneur and specifically sales. It's what my dad did, but I don't have any experience. And I'm like really putting the ceiling over my head.
Right.
And then I have this conversation, I'll never forget it, at my kitchen table with my mom's sister,
Right.
who is actually living with us now.
Right.
And that's a whole nother conversation.
Right.
But she's one of the most influential people in my life.
That's
for sure.
awesome.
Aside from everyone else that I mentioned
Yeah.
those until this point. But, and I explained my situation, and she said, Ryan, if you think you can do it, stop sitting around. She's like, go get the job. She's like, even if you fail, you can say that you gave it a shot.
Yeah. Or you could fail and try again.
And yeah, exactly. She's
Yeah.
like, there's nothing wrong with taking a chance.
Right.
Was the moral of the story.
Right.
I hung up that phone. The Long Island Clean Water was our provider for water filtration. We've been customers of them for something like 4 years.
Wow.
And at that point, the conversation with my aunt really began with, we have these people that provide this equipment. It seems really interesting to me. It has some of the water filtration treatment components that I had with school,
Right.
but it's a totally different thing.
Right.
And then she ended up influencing me and motivating me
call
to
it.
go for it.
Yeah.
So I did exactly what everyone would do, right? I called in. I said, hi, my name's Ryan Weinstein. I'm a customer of yours, but I'm actually also interested in applying for a job.
Right.
And Mady, the co-owner of our company, Mark and Mady, their husband and wife, and they've got a great story too.
That's awesome.
But
We'll
Mady,
get them in here. Tell
yeah,
it.
you got to.
Yeah.
They're a riot.
Yeah.
And they are some of the smartest people that you will ever speak to.
That's awesome.
The experience is staggering. But I get Mady on the phone. I give her my name, my information, blah, 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 blah. And she says, okay, we'll give you a call. A couple of days go by.
Right.
Week goes by.
No call.
Week and a half, I think I'm on a Friday.
Right.
All right. I'm an ambitious person. I know you're never going to get anything the first shot. Maybe you get lucky.
Right.
You got to go again.
Call again.
Call again.
Don't hurt.
Didn't hurt at all. Called again.
And it
Hey,
cost you nothing.
cost me nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, I don't know if you remember me. I called last week. Really interested in the job. I just wanted to check on my inquiry, see if it was possible for me to come in for an interview. The second call did it.
Right. Persistence.
Yes. Second call did it. I ended up going in, interviewing with Mark, who's Mady's husband, and Daryl, who is our sales manager.
Okay.
And I thought it went well. I filled out the application, gave all my credentials, and we shook hands, and I walked out. I felt good about it. Week goes by. No phone call.
They're playing hard to get these guys.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, yeah.
But what was funny is that afterwards, right, so I called, of course, another follow-up call. And I said, hey, we met. I just wanted to check on the status of my application, see what you guys thought. And they respond with, we really like you, but to be honest, you seem overqualified for the position. We can't figure out why you're applying. And I said, absolutely not. I am just genuinely interested in the opportunity that you guys have to offer.
Right.
And I went in on crutches for my interview.
Right.
So I was like, I don't have much else to do right now.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm just willing to learn.
Right.
Because in as much as I had the technical background, to them, subconsciously, that's also kind of the opposite of what you're looking for in a salesperson.
Right.
Because there's a lot of rigidity to numbers that maybe you don't convey with emotional connection.
Right.
So, long story short, I got in. I did my training. They brought me on as an admin.
Now, they a big company or?
They were smaller at the time.
Right.
So I joined them in September of 2020,
Right.
I guess.
Right. So tail ends of COVID.
Yep. And, they're 10-person office, and we're in a space in the industrial area of Plainview. They're growing, so at this point they have a full office space, and they have 2 other warehouses for product and trucks.
Okay.
Because the installation, the design, installation, and service components of their business have already been well established.
Right.
And as I join, I'm working. I joined September at, I want to say it was sometime in October or November. They actually transition offices. They got a bigger space in Old Bethpage down the road, and ended up moving the whole operation. So I kind of join, I get the full background from an administrative standpoint, right? I'm cold calling, checking on customers in terms of their service requirements, learning the database, basically the ins and outs of how their business and company operates.
Right.
And during this period, I'm expressing my interest in getting into sales. That's why I jumped on board. But to their defense, I had no experience or exposure.
But did you not have experience?
So I had experience, but that was the thing. They
Right.
really wanted me to understand the sales component of what they did versus the technicality, which is important, but it's...
Can you explain that? So what's the sales component? Because the technicality is important to have in order to speak to a customer about what you're selling.
For sure.
Right? So that would be important, but then the communication skills got to be there too, which you already have.
Right.
So did they have like a special way of selling?
Yeah, so everyone's got their sales methods.
Right.
My dad talked to me about Zig Ziglar for a million years.
I hear this stuff.
Yep.
Yep.
The company had been using the Sandler method up until forever.
Right.
Or I think from inception, that was just the...
So what is that method? Can you...
It's really a concept that is centered around a submarine. It's like on the first page of the Sandler sales course, it's a submarine, and it basically takes you through the steps of a sales call, and I think it's something like pain, budget, decision, timeline, demo, something like that. And that was great because I'd never looked at structure of a sales call. I'd never been on a sales call. I didn't know what to expect. And so I took a lot of information from that, but more so, I really learned how to listen. Because I spent my whole life up until that point absorbing information and then regurgitating it.
Right.
Right? Similar to what I'm doing now, I get caught and then I just run.
Right.
But there's so much value, if not more so, than speaking in listening.
Right.
And hearing.
Right.
Because it's one thing to hear, it's another thing to listen.
And knowing when to listen.
And through that, I was able to use my technical information in order to familiarize a customer or a client or educate, is what I like to say, but in a way that was compatible with their wants, needs, and learning preferences.
Right.
Because some people are super technical like me, and some people are hands-on. I could throw numbers at them all day, but if they don't see me turn their water yellow because there's chlorine present, or have me open the toilet tank and observe all the rust and sediment accumulation in the bottom,
Right.
then there's going to be nothing to attach what I'm saying to.
Right.
So context is key.
Right.
And from that point, it really allowed me to merge the two sides of my experience, I guess, into something that was consumable by the most people. It's like you could be the smartest guy in the world, but if no one can understand you, then how far is it really taking you?
Yeah, I don't want to say dumbing it down, but you kind of have to
No,
sometimes.
simplifying anything
When people
takes more
start
work.
throwing big words out there, it just doesn't even make sense sometimes.
Falls
Sometimes-
flat.
Right.
Completely falls flat.
Yeah.
And that was like my biggest takeaway from the whole sales training process from January to March of 2021.
Okay.
I went through a sales course, going out on appointments with other reps, and figuring out how they did things and able
Right.
to develop my method.
Right.
And still refining it to this day.
Well, you'll always be because it's ever evolving. Right?
It's the thing.
Yeah.
A student for eternity. But that's fine with me.
Now, how do you get your contacts? How do you get leads from the company or people interested, or you guys? How do you do it?
Yeah. So we have a number of different lead sources. Thankfully, over the almost 40 years that Mark and Mady have been in business, they have developed relationships with a number of different sources.
Okay.
So the biggest connections that we have are with big box stores, like Costco, Lowe's, and Home Depot. We have the opportunity to lead generate in-store, and then we also have call centers that those entities are connected with.
Okay.
So that helps. I love going in and lead generating.
Right.
It's the best chance you have is meeting someone face to face, shaking hands,
Right.
and starting a warm interaction.
Right.
I've cold called too. Those
Right.
are great. That's
Right.
the first thing I ever did.
Right.
And that taught me a whole lot. Just from listening and speaking, because there is no physical component. It's,
Right.
dial for dollars is what they
Yes.
call it, right?
Yep.
Or what my mom always said, at least.
Yeah.
And then they also have the website, which people inquire through. They have Home Advisor and Angie's List. They have, we call them new homeowner leads. They're essentially cards that real estate agents will pass out. People
Right.
can send them in and ask
Right.
for more information. So a lot of options. I've door knocked for the summers, and it's like really everything. They have a ton of resource, but it's really up to you how you're going to develop your business.
Are you one of their top performers, or becoming one of their top performers?
I wouldn't say that.
You wouldn't say that?
Yeah, we got guys that have been with the company for 10, 15 years
Right.
as sales reps. So, one or two longer.
Right.
And now they've taken sort of a back seat. They've entered more of a retirement role, and they act as mentors now.
Right. Well, because they built their book, I guess you can say, right? And their book stemmed off into different areas. You're
Yep.
still building your book.
For sure.
But as far as like, you're, in my eyes, a rarity. You're pushing, you're door knocking, like, you're really pushing to build that book. They must see that as mentors, and like want to grab onto you and steer you in the right direction, right? Or is it competitive?
It is competitive. But I have been fortunate to develop a really close relationship with most everyone at the company.
Right.
And I
You
think
win them over.
Yeah, it's, and not even in that regard, it's just more that I really resonate with a lot of things that they say and the practice that they preach. And I think there's just a mutual respect there. They
Right.
know that I want to work my tail off to be better for them. And because of that, they give me the opportunity to succeed.
That's good.
Just by providing me with these resources. But if I didn't show the work ethic, there is absolutely no doubt in my mind I wouldn't be where I'm at.
Right.
It's I really, really pushed.
That's good.
And continue to.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's a situation where I came in with what I felt like was pretty minimal footing, and is now just a perfect example of how your background leading up to a certain point in your life and an endeavor is important
Yes.
to a degree, but you really, as a person with ambition and motivation, have all the tools to take yourself wherever you want to be.
Right.
As long as you're willing to dedicate that focus and determination.
Right.
Because it's like, you can do anything you set your mind to, right?
Now, what would you say was your biggest takeaway in the last, 15 years of your life? Obviously, your relationships, stuff like that, but you went to college. Like, are you using things in college that you learned in your career today, or is it more of the exposure with communication and dealing with different style customers, different personalities, stuff like that? What would you say is most used in what you're doing now? Because what you're doing now, you technically don't need a college degree for, right?
Correct.
You did further education. I actually had a good conversation with a guy, and I'm going to quote Steve Macchio on this one because I spoke to him 2 days ago.
Okay.
And he said that we shouldn't call it college anymore. We shouldn't separate it. We should call it furthering education.
Absolutely.
And whether you're furthering education to become a teacher, a lawyer, a doctor, HVAC guy, filtration specialist, salesman, that's furthering your education. So even after all the college, you still had to go through a program of furthering your education to get to where you are. And how many months was that program?
The sales training was 3 months,
3 months.
then I consider the administrative position that I held
Right.
for the 3 months prior also as an educational period.
Absolutely, so 6 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Which is, and you're still learning now.
that's what
So now,
it's all relative.
Do
I
you
feel like.
do you take some of the college stuff that you learned to this, or, yeah,
To a degree,
right,
yeah. I walked away with a lot of knowledge and information from college.
right,
Some of it's applicable,
right,
some of it's not. But in terms of what I feel like was my biggest lesson learned, I would say 100% is the communication and interaction. It's
That's
just,
the likability factor.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just be, like I said, really being able to package it in a way that is consumable by the most people out
Right.
there. So, and I had a point that I wanted to elaborate on that, but I just lost it.
Well, as a salesman, you don't want to come across too strong, but you don't want
Yeah.
to come across like you don't care either. So there's a balance there, but that balance is different with every experience. You know, because some people like you don't want to talk them out of doing things. Sometimes they get insulted if you talk them out of it. Like I say all the time, people call me and they want to do these crazy things, and I'm like, well, this is going to cost a lot of money. Like, you know, I come from a blue collar background. That's a lot of money to me. So I don't necessarily think you need that.
Right.
But you have to be careful on how you say it because, like, well, I want it. Well, listen, that's fine. If you want it, I'll do whatever you want. But you don't necessarily need it.
Right.
You know, and I'm sure you go with that because you could sell them a big package or you could sell them a small package. You just got to find where that package lies, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, and how many packages would you say you guys offer?
Oh.
Lots?
In terms of product offerings,
Right.
50 plus.
Right.
And that's a combination of whole house system units and drinking water systems and
Right.
how those vary. And that'll be a whole nother conversation if you want to get into.
Absolutely, yeah.
But I remember I have 2 points actually, 3 after you just said what you said.
There you go.
So the first point was further education. I chose the college route.
Right.
Right. I wouldn't go back on my decision. It has contributed to who I am as a
Well,
person.
you're very strong at that, obviously.
Yeah.
You did well. You
I
were
knew from the
accelerated
beginning.
in college too. You were accelerated. So
I did all right.
you wore that hat. So
I
that's-
did.
That's good.
I wear it heavy.
Yeah.
I love being a nerd.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
that being said, I know that what I did is absolutely not for everyone. It's probably not for most people.
Right.
Because there are times that I was banging my head against the wall. It's
Right.
not easy stuff.
Right.
But that being said, that doesn't mean it's any easier or harder than you going out at 19 and working boilers and getting that experience
It's just a
hands-on.
different path.
Completely different.
Yes. Yep.
But equal in terms of order of magnitude of experience gained.
And the result.
And the result. Because now you own this amazing business.
Right.
And you have all these amazing partners.
Right.
And you have a beautiful space you guys operate out of.
Right. I'm just an older version of you that took a different path.
Right.
So when you're my age, I'm sure you'll have plenty of
fingers
things.
crossed.
You know,
Yeah.
I could see it, you know, and like you said, as long as you keep that mentality that you have, which is huge, which is a rarity now. You know, I guess it was a rarity then too, but it's definitely a rarity now. So it's like, you know, I'm excited to see what you're going to do in the next 10 years. So because
I'm
our
excited
relationship
too.
will keep going.
Yeah.
Because, you know, filtration is an important thing. And it's something that, like you said, even if you want to have your two bosses come in and talk about, you know, it is a discussion. You know, there are a lot of things that, you know, could be better in Long Island, right, as far as water goes. And you can probably rattle off a million things. But it is an awareness, you know, that we should all talk about. And my wife wants one too, so I'm going to have to talk to you about that too.
Great.
Because we live over by the airport over in Islip.
I've been
over
talking
on
about
Ronkonkoma.
MacArthur forever.
Yeah.
Been trying to build of course, my dad's excited about the convention center because that's
Right.
where he will hold his showcases, but now just got it designated as a super fun site, which
Right.
means all sorts of groundwater quality implications. And
Yes.
So, yeah, but we'll save that again. For,
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
So, but it's good. you know?
Yeah.
So,
And, sorry,
you had a third point.
Uh,
I stopped you after the first.
first, yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
I lost the third, but now I got the second.
Yeah, it'll come to you while you're talking about this.
Yeah. You asked me between all my experiences, what's the most valuable thing I pulled away?
Yes.
And then you said, I gave you an answer, and then you said balance.
Mm-hmm.
And that is by far the most important lesson that I've learned, but continue to learn.
That's awesome.
And you know, through everything that we've discussed today, going all in on academia, and then coming out and running that MRF until the point that I broke my body down into dust.
Right.
And then coming back and going all into sales, and then trying to find a merge of the two capacities with technicality and the communication. So like really my whole life has just been an act of balancing the seesaw. And I think that is something that personally I could work on forever.
Yeah.
And I think that getting as organized as I physically can in the interest of creating that balance is what's allowed me to
And
progress.
that balance is forever changing. Wait till you have kids.